sorry. I saw a bad chance, I took it. Yeah. Fire forecast in 2009, as you can see, put a little red dot right over here where we were in extreme fire behavior. We do hit these things. It happens. If we had had a fire event on that, we could have had this, this scenario I'm going to paint out for you guys here. April 9th, 2009 was just one bad day in Texas. The Montauk complex up north burned up 144,000 acres in one afternoon. 129 homes lost. That many homes saved. 111 barns saved or burnt. It's a lot of structures, and that all done in one afternoon. They mobilized and put the fire out, but that happened north. If that fire would have started here, we'd be in the same boat. And what was happening was the fire was so large in some areas, and it was Possum Kingdom Lake up there, for those of you who are familiar with that, it was jumping the coves in that area. It was jumping that coves. And, you know, about that same time, we had that fire, not in the city, don't worry, of Lakeway, but it was at the end there, in outside of just outside the city limits. And we had spot fires starting 1,700 feet from the body of the fire. 1,700 feet. We had 3 structures threatened. We actually had 2 on fire when our first engine got there. So this stuff can happen here, just not as long term as we had out where I'm from. And we spent all our, so I spent, my birthday's in August, and I think for my first 30 years, I was never home for my birthday. I was always in fire camp somewhere. Okay, so let's do a quick comparison just to make it a little more morbid after lunch. You guys, some of you aren't touching your dessert. You're so upset. Some of you are. Some of you that are eating your dessert could be firefighters, okay? So if you, little inside joke there. There was the rice fire. A good friend of mine is the fire chief of Fallbrook, California. We worked together in Lake Tahoe together, a great man, and I called him up and I said, hey, I'm talking to the chamber. Can you help me out? And he says, oh boy, can I. He gave me 4 pages of notes, and I'm going to talk about some issues that compared. This was the fire he had about 2 years ago called the rice fire. I'm going to make a fire called the 71 fire, and I'll show you where it's located in a minute. It's all hypothetical. This has not happened yet. That's why I put it in quotations. See? Got that? Hasn't happened yet, and guess what, folks? It's my dream, my wish, and my prayer that this never happens here. And let's try to engineer it out. So let's be careful when we're out there, especially when it's dry. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference. This was a Monday through Friday event. They had a population of about 60,000. I'm going to lower ours a little bit. They lost 240 residences, 10 commercial businesses, a hospital, 3 senior living centers, and schools are in session. Does this look vaguely similar to what we could experience in this area? Yes. Fallbrook's a very, very, very affluent community in North San Diego County, very similar to Lakeway in many ways. But I'm going to say we have the same kind of thing, so let's just say that happened here. What would that mean to us? So let's compare the two and take a look. Here's what that fire looked like. Here's all the structures it burnt. This is the city of Fallbrook. Now, how many engineers do we have in here? They're not going to raise their hand. 1. Engineer 2. What kind of engineer? Any kind. What?
Nuclear.
Did he say nuclear or nuclear?
Nuclear. U.S. Navy, yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, right.
This is amazing. We need to talk to him more. Anyway, I'm sorry this came out a little dark, but when we put this together, the 71 fire would look similar to that off 71 burning into the areas, especially into the wildlands south of Lakeway here. This is 71 and 620, and it would be a similar footprint that we would see on this other fire. So they would look similar in fire-affected areas. Okay, so what this means to the Fallbrook community, I'm going to share with you guys a little bit about what I got from them. According to the Fallbrook Chamber of Commerce, 5% of the businesses failed that were in that area. That includes the Fallbrook area. What happened was, it was a Monday through Friday event, okay? Meaning that the fire was put out on Tuesday, but it took 4 days to get the power back. Think about that for a minute. Think about those you guys with stock, and think about some other stuff with that. It took them to get everything back together a little bit of time. The agencies that lost, or the folks that lost that, were folks that were having a hard time anyways in this economy, and it just pushed them over the edge. So they lost 5% of their customers as far as the Chamber of Commerce goes, because they lost 5% of their businesses. So restaurants, grocery stores lost power for 5 days. Places that had cold frozen storage, complete loss, all perishables were gone. Think about this for a minute. Insurance was a major issue. Now, you need to the time to contact your insurance agent is before the fire. Two things. The folks who did okay, I don't want to say did great, it's still horrible. Ask Jim and I, and we can tell you about insurance companies, and you know what the fire really cost us was a substantial amount of money. What we found out, and what you'll find out, is people in the fire perimeter that actually lost their businesses did okay because they had total loss. Who really got messed up were the folks outside of that perimeter that I showed you. Those folks had there was no claim. The fire hadn't touched them. Because they only had fire insurance, they didn't have what's called, what did he call it here? Business interruption insurance. Okay? So that really hurt their community. He said, and he's a member of the Chamber of Commerce there, that business interruption was a bigger thing than the actual fire because it affected so many folks around them. So keep that in mind. So people that had fire thing was in a mile of the fire, they got reimbursement. Outside that mile of fire, when they didn't have power, they still lost it. So keep that in mind. Good news on the, and I would say the same as around here. From a law enforcement point of view, when you guys going to be in here, there was no looting. That was good news. The bad news is it won't be, David, it's not going to be the cops you know back here because they're going to be so busy doing other stuff. You're going to have what we call mutual aid law enforcement officers in here. And guess what? You're going to walk up to them, they're not going to know who you are, and they're not going to let you back in. That's just the reality. And this is what he wanted me to share with you guys. And it really torqued off the business community because they know those guys. You won't notice the fire trucks. If we have an incident like this, most of the fire trucks I'm going to be calling in from are from all over the state. Now, I have mutual aid with the entire state of Texas. There's a lot of engines I can bring in with that. And I'm going to make that call if this happens. So you're going to see engines from farther away than Austin in here. And it's the same thing with law enforcement. The state mobilizes to do this stuff. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is don't expect the locals to be here to help you out. You can't call anyone and get a favor done to try to get back in your business. And the cops were not very friendly to the business community trying to get in and just check out their business. Because if you could get back to your business, just imagine what you could do. And they couldn't get back in there. Another big deal, and I never thought of this one either, emergency information and updating your emergency information and having it in two separate places is so important. You've got to keep up with your phone numbers, you've got to keep up with all that stuff because all your stuff's in your place of business, probably behind some kind of secured firewall for your computers. You can't get to that from the outside perhaps if the power's off, whatnot. Make sure you have redundant systems and you keep them with you at your home or somewhere else away from the business. That was a big issue for those guys. And they said just contacting people out of state took so much time. And then don't forget, your loved ones are going to want to call and know how you're doing, especially if you live near your business. Take care of that stuff, get those records ready to go ahead of time. So keep that in mind. And I want to leave you with this part of this issues for us in this community. Defensible space, 30 to 50 feet. I've got all sorts of stuff out there at the vendors at the table. Is that our sponsors table? Is that where it is? Our table out back. Thank you. Thank you for getting that. On defensible space for your home. It's not just cool for your home. It's a good thing to have for your business. Okay? Now, I know I married a Texas woman, and she loves those cedar trees because they give us shade. And I don't like cedar trees because they look to me like they're going to burn. And I've seen them burn. Everything burns to me. It's just a matter of time. Yeah, but honey, someone's going to put a match down here, She looks at me, they provide shade. Get them back from your house. Make sure that you've got 30 feet clearance, especially if you're living on the edge of the urban interface area where you've got wildlands adjacent to your property. Clean them up before the fire. The last time I was in San Diego, it was on fire, and that was in 2003, and I took a group of engines down from northern Nevada and California to put out fires. You wouldn't believe, when we went to Scripps Ranch, which was completely burned up, and put out hot spots. That was horrible, because it was a mess there. That was out in the west side of the fire. Then we drove for an entire day to get to the head of the fire, and I'm not exaggerating like I normally do, Jim. And we spent all day driving, and at dark we got to the head of the fire. That's how big this fire was. It was the biggest fire in the state's history. And the fire was approaching this community. You wouldn't believe how much defensible space was going on before the people evacuated. Everyone was out there. All I could hear was chainsaws and weed whackers and all that stuff they were clearing around their properties. The time to do defensible space is before the fire. If you have a business, it applies to you too. The fire doesn't know that that's a business. It's not going to burn up. It treats it all the same. So defensible space is something we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Oh.